Delivering as one UN at the country level in partnership with Indigenous peoples and government is the overarching approach of the UNEP strategy. It's the first global interagency collaboration between the ILO, OHCHR, UNDP, UNICEF, and UNFPA, which aims to facilitate the implementation of international standards for Indigenous peoples, in particular, the UN DRIP and ILO Convention number 169 on Indigenous and tribal peoples at the country level, through building the capacities of governments and Indigenous peoples in their efforts to establish consultative and participatory processes at the country level. UNEP programs and activities are jointly designed at the country level with the active participation and input from various partners and relative stakeholders, such as governments, Indigenous peoples, and the UN country teams. Partnership is really at the heart of UNEP and represents one of its key achievements since its inception. At the country level, UNEP has brought together a variety of partners that otherwise would have been operating in isolation and with less and far fewer results. I'm delighted to be able to introduce our panelists today, some of whom have to immediately leave to go to other side events. So if you see people moving out, you will know why. Let me just tell you one brief word about the format, so you'll understand sort of what we hope to achieve. Each panelist will speak for approximately 3 to 5 minutes, which is a relatively short period of time, but we've asked them to keep to that time so that we can allow for maximum participation from the audience. The 3 prongs that we've asked them to touch on in their discussion would be to give a high point or a success story from their country team or country project or regional project. The second is to give the strategy for how they achieved that success. And third, of course, is to think about ways forward in ways that UNEP can be strengthened. We are also launching our success stories, which really lays out some of the incredible work that UNEP has done since its inception. I'm holding one of them here, and there are copies at the front, and you are more than welcome to come up and get one at your leisure. With that, allow me to introduce our first 3 panelists. After those 3, we will break for 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Another 3 panelists will briefly speak, and we will break for brief questions, and then we will have our final discussions. First, allow me to introduce Mr. Devasish Roy, who's a member of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues and a UNEP Policy Board member. Devasish?
Thank you, Angela. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to be here, and I've also been in the board for some time and also acted on 2 co-chairs. Now the good hands of and Angela here. And the main thing about UNEP, amongst other things, is it really brings the main actors.
I thought you were going with what's her name, T.
And that project actually brings in all the agencies and also Indigenous people, so everybody has to speak to everybody else. And so the whole thing about raising the capacity building of the main actors, and one is the UN agencies themselves. We know that despite the UN declarations, several UN-related documents with regard to UN agencies, that everybody doesn't know enough about Indigenous issues. This sort of, in a way, sort of forces all the agencies to speak to each other. So you have all the little bits of children coming in from UNICEF, and you get the development bit coming from UNDP, and so forth. So, and this also, the whole exercise also takes into account the capacity raising of governments. And the governments in many countries are not aware of Indigenous issues, and they are not mainstreamed into their policy making or to the practice where it relates to Indigenous peoples. And that, so it brings the governance as well. And of course, Indigenous peoples are the most important thing, that in the process of implementing several of these projects, in formulating the project ideas, entire project cycle, there is Indigenous involvement, and particularly in areas where there have been very little